Hello and welcome to Box Office Culture. I'm your host, Tony Nunes, and today we are talking Planet of the Apes. The 10th film in the Planet of the Apes series is coming out this week, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So we thought, what a fun time to talk about the entire series. But instead of talking about every film individually, let's find one film to talk about. And for that, I chose Beneath the Planet of the Apes. So that's what we're talking about today. Beneath the Planet of the Apes, a little about the Planet of the Apes franchise ahead of the new release. So join us in the Forbidden Zone after this. Okay, it's been a while. I admit that. I'm sorry. But we're back. And we're talking about one of the big movie releases for May. And it's kind of the start of the summer movie season in some ways. And that is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And joining me today on this podcast, as he has countless times before, because he is very much part of this show, whether he wants to admit it or not, Mr. Lee Metzger.
Hey everybody, it's me again. It's old producer Lee back in the chair talking about apes.
And we talked about this last week. We said, hey, what's a good topic for our conversation next week? And I said, Planet of the Apes. Let's talk about, actually, you said Planet of the Apes.
Well, no matter who said it, it was a very good idea.
It's a great idea. And I said, have you ever seen Beneath the Planet of the Apes?
Well, so these are the films that I have seen. I've seen all of the new ones. I've seen I started with Mark Wahlberg's, and then I'm up to date with all, like, the saga of Caesar. But the old movies I've done my due diligence for once. I have seen the original Planet of the Apes film with Charlton, and I liked it. I thought it was fun. It is one of those movies that has people in prosthetics that don't move.
They move a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair. You know what? Strangely enough, and I don't want to jump ahead here or anything, but there was a lot of facial expressions that were coming through, because from their mouth down, there's not a lot you can do. But I could see a lot of expressions.
Dr. Zaius, who's a character in both the first and second film, which we're going to talk about, for some reason his prosthetics have a great deal of movement.
They do.
I mean, he has a lot of identifying features, from his eyes to his nose, that they move really well compared to some of the other even main characters. They're just,
Ursa's has got a bit of a stone face.
And then the deeper you go, like the extras, I mean, they're just wearing masks. There's no movement. I mean, honestly, if you look deep enough at some of those masks, they didn't even put eye makeup.
Some of them, they looked like they were melting in the sun. I can't imagine being in those prosthetics in that desert.
The mouth movements, though, on all of them are it does lack a little bit in its definition. It's a lot of, like, and it doesn't matter. It's like watching something out of sync, watching like an animated film that was made in another country and dubbed over. You're just not really getting.
So you have a history with these films, right?
Well, yeah. Before we talk about the history,
okay,
I want to say that post-apocalyptic film is my favorite genre, and has always been my favorite genre of movie, or of media even. I mean, currently,
just that setting.
Just the post-apocalyptic setting is so rich and amazing.
Sure.
And you can do a lot with it. I mean, we have Mad Max, you have Planet of the Apes, Fallout, which I'm enjoying right now, which is an incredible show on Prime, playing the game Fallout. There's so much.
Well, in cinema, the cup truly runneth over. Book of Eli.
Book of Eli is very underrated.
The Road.
The Road is dark. It's one of my favorite books I've ever read, but damn.
Do you have a when it comes to post-apocalyptic, you can go a lot of different ways. You can go The Last of Us, some weird.
It goes dark.
So, well, like Mushroom Plague, or there's 28 Days Later.
What's
post-apocalyptic.
my favorite?
There's the nuclear fallout, post-apocalyptic.
I mean, I don't know why I love the stories, the setting, everything. The reality is so dark in these movies, so I don't know why I love these movies. Even Chernobyl, which is not a post-apocalyptic television series, but it's a series about us being on the brink of something happening or something actually happening that it touches on that.
That's interesting.
I think I just have a fascination with the fallacy of man, and like, you know, our
comeuppance.
It's not even our comeuppance. It's just our ego and all of this stuff coming to a head in the worst possible way, and then the scrappiness of people and societies and nature and coming back from that. I just find it a really compelling world to place stories within. And what I really like about the Planet of the Apes series, first of all, the campiness of the Planet of the Apes series is
goated.
It's so good. It knows what it's doing a little bit. It's campy. Some of these films, like the one we're going to talk about today, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, I don't know that they know.
I don't think they do.
The joke. I think that they think it's way more serious than it is. But someone like Frank Miller in his Mad Max films, he knows the joke. I mean, he goes there. He goes to these weird places. The new Furiosa movie is coming out in a few weeks. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm sure we can maybe do an episode about Mad Max in a few weeks as well. But the Planet of the Apes, there's just something. It's the most clear-cut example of like the primitive versus civilized argument as well. But unlike, you know, nuclear fallout movies and things like that, this is a movie series that is more about what happens, you know, thousands of years into the future, where kind of the whole hierarchy of living creatures shifts. The balance completely shifts from human to ape. Everything else is kind of about humans just trying to survive in that harsh reality. This is not. This is, I mean, it is a little bit, but it's more about nature taking its course and repeating the same mistakes of man, which is something I love about Beneath the Planet of the Apes especially. It's really it's the movie in the entire 10-film Planet of the Apes series, which we'll talk about that too. I mean, as a series, the Planet of the Apes movies don't really fit together nicely.
I was going to ask, are they all canon?
We'll talk about that after we talk about Beneath the Planet of the Apes, because it's a really good question. And the answer is no.
Well, spoilers.
Spoilers. But I think Beneath...
You mean listen to the end of the episode to find out?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to keep you here, folks. But this isn't a movie about the inevitability of man's destruction. And I think this movie in particular... Well, let's dive into Beneath the Planet of the Apes. It's a good point to start on. So you said you saw the first Planet of the Apes with Charlton Heston.
I don't remember too much about it. I remember my mind being completely blown at the end, obviously. 'Cause
the end is iconic.
One of the first huge moments in my cinematic experiences of that, like seeing the Statue of Liberty's hand up like that on the beach, was a monumental experience.
It's like one of the first real shocking what a twist moments, and it's one of the most iconic what a twist moments in all of cinema. You know, you have Charlton Heston, he crash lands on this planet. He's time traveled. He's hit some kind of time loop in space and gone thousands of years into the future.
Now, does he know that when he lands? Because they did this thing in Beneath the Planet of the Apes where more astronauts come to save Charlton Heston, Taylor. And one of the first things they say is like, "Oh, I got a temporal reading that it is Earth year 300955.
Yeah.
That's not something that happened in the first film, is it?
I don't remember if Charlton Heston realizes that he's in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. In this one,
I don't think he does.
I don't think he does either. And I think that's why the twist, the reveal, the shock of it
Hits
all.
so hard.
Because, if for anybody who hasn't seen it, he is on this planet where humans don't speak and humans are corralled by
Well, they in this film, I was kind of frustrated in this film because it's not just that humans can't speak. They're fundamentally idiotic. They have no.
They're primitive. Humanity has gone back to the primitive form, and the ape are now the more primitive.
But if that's
species.
true, shouldn't they be able to sign language like gorillas and apes can do?
Yes, and I will tell you that the newer series of films definitely handles that reality a little stronger than the last. We'll see with this new one coming up, which has humans in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the storytelling has definitely evolved since the 70s into the new series, which is still going on. Storytelling wise, this movie is fun. It's campy. It's weird in its 1970 way. But it definitely has some flaws, and that's one of them. The humans, what is I can never remember.
Brent?
No, Brent. I know Brent.
Nova.
Okay, so Nova, who's
more like verbal.
No communication. Nova is the woman, the only real human woman character of note in this film. And she's not given much to do or say, but that's part of that. It tracks with the rest of the humans, except for the ones who have traveled from Earth.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's a weird scene in this movie, not to just jump around here, but there's a weird scene early on with her recalling her and Charlton Heston's character riding through and going to a place called the Forbidden Zone, and he's talking to her in a way that is just so creepy and cringy. He's basically talking about procreating with her, and she has no idea what he's saying, and he's a man of a certain age in this movie.
Is
too.
there a romantic aspect to the first film?
No. They shoehorn some of that in, but it doesn't work. It just feels like it did in this film.
It's
Gross.
Very, very strange. And I know it's like the 1970s and women in the 1970s in cinema. It's a pretty, problematic, a lot of times pretty problematic what they symbolized and were utilized as in a lot of these films.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very, very, very weird how she can't speak. She can't think almost, and she's basically just like put in the skin. And it's a full 55 years later, so take it with a grain of salt. But she's put in the skimpiest clothes. She's
loincloth bikinis.
and
all
then
of that.
And then there's this scene, and I don't want to skip too far ahead, but like where our hero is mind controlled to choke and kiss her. At the same time, and while drowning her in basically the baptism bath at St. Patrick's Cathedral. It's weird. It is so strange.
It's a 1970 movie, not to make excuses for it, but it is a product of its time in many ways, and it's a movie that the success of the first Planet of the Apes movie, they were like, well, we got to do another one of these, and they really kind of rushed it.
What worked? Beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Bring her back.
Apes on horses. People love that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what they did. But what I do like about Beneath the Planet of the Apes is that it does do that thing that sequels do. It says, this is what we're going to do. This is what worked for the first one. This is our brand. We're going to stick to it. We're going to stick to some similar tropes. And then in the third act, we're going to throw it all up in the air and blow it up literally, because they do. So many movies like this in the third act, they're very predictable and weird and, maybe not conclusive. This movie, you can argue, it takes the story in a place that if you don't know this movie, you're like, wow, this is really weird, but kind of cool and unique. And then we'll talk about the ending, which is something interesting too. But another thing that's really enjoyable about Beneath the Planet of the Apes, for me, is that I also think that it does take itself very seriously at times, including the opening monologue, which is just a voiceover narration from one of the apes about man, and it's beware the. I wrote this down because it's this is good stuff.
I've got something I wrote down that I'd like to also perform for you. So
I'm performing.
I will be performing. Yeah, this is
Okay.
a performance.
I'll
give you notes.
Lee and I play an ongoing game of D&D every week, and my performing is terrible. So
yeah, and just like at the end of every D&D session, I'll have a bunch of notes for you.
All right. Beware the beast man, for he is the devil's pawn. Alone among God's primates, he kills for sport, for lust. Yea, he will murder his brother to possess his brother's land. Let him not breed in great numbers, for he will make a desert of his home and yours. Shun him, for he is the harbinger of death. That's how this movie opens.
Is that from the Bible? What is that?
So I looked this up ahead of speaking today because I was like, where is this from?
Yeah.
This sounds like it's pulled from some great piece of literature. Mm-hmm. It is pulled from the screenplay for Beneath the Planet of the Apes. There's a line at the end of the movie too, which is similarly dramatic, but at its core, as cheesy as the dialogue and story and all of these elements are, this movie really does hit a note on that line about what is primitive and what is civilized. Not just like ape versus human, but in humanity, for lack of a better word, what is the civilized way of existing? What is the primitive way of existing? There's a scene where there's kind of a senate of intellectual chimpanzees talking about the warmongering gorillas. There's a scene in this movie, and this movie came out in 1970, so in some ways this is even like a direct pull from Vietnam, where the gorillas are marching off to war, and a lot of the chimpanzees are in a circle, and they're protesting, and they have their signs up, and they're chanting, what are they chanting? Oh, God. Gorilla brutality. They're chanting because, the gorillas are breaking them up. And those are the intellectuals. So there are elements of this film.
You want to talk about the factions real quick? The factions within Ape City?
Yeah.
Because there are each faction is separated by species and by role within the society. You have the militaristic gorillas, lead the military. Mm-hmm. You have the scientific orangutans, who maybe they seem to be more in like an administrative role,
sort of,
because the chimpanzees.
But Dr. Zaius, he's almost a philosophizing, scientist.
Thinker.
Yeah, he's like
maybe like a philosopher.
We are killing this word. He's
philosopher.
A philosopher scientist.
See, this
of
is
sorts.
why they changed Philosopher's Stone to Sorcerer's Stone for American audiences.
That's right. Oh, God. And
then the chimpanzees are
like the intellectuals. Mm-hmm. And they're also, I think, I don't know. I was going to say what they're like in today's society, but I'm gonna not do that.
It seems like they're laborers as well.
A little bit. They're like the everyman.
Yeah.
The every chimp.
Yeah. The Whitney Houston of them.
Because
she is every woman.
Yeah, she is.
You have that in your notes?
I don't have that in my notes. Whitney Houston. No Whitney Houston in my notes.
Well, I've with that one line, I've exhausted all of my notes.
So the rule of law in Ape City, they have the lawgiver. They have this big statue of the lawgiver, which we have in our office. I don't know if you realize that. I have a lawgiver statue in the office upstairs.
Check the Instagram. We'll put a picture of the lawgiver up.
That's right. But the lawgiver, he tells that no human could tell good versus evil, and the only good human is a dead human. Those are lines from the movie, and that's another interesting layer to this movie is that the apes. So this is the year 3955 A.D. Man has essentially, at least in these first two movies, man has destroyed the world. And it's talked about that nuclear war is how they destroyed mankind. And, there are few humans left and they devolved over time. So now the apes think they're superior, and the apes don't want to fall to the same things that led to humanity's demise. So they talk about humans in ways that say, humans did this to themselves. They didn't know good versus evil. And then you're shown like military factions of the apes and things like that. And it all builds up to the end of this film, which is essentially the apes repeating history and showing that, oh yeah, like they're no better than the humans. They're just like the humans. They're good. They're evil. They have the same tendencies, and it all leads to the same place. It's a perpetuation of the apocalypse mindset, and it's a really interesting way to take this film.
One thing that really stood out to me at the end of this film is the cabal of like subterranean bomb worshippers. So what ends up happening is Brent, a fellow astronaut, follows the same astral trajectory that Charlton Heston Taylor went on. Brent crash lands with his captain, Skipper. Skipper dies. Brent's on his own. By happenstance, Nova, who has since departed her companionship with Taylor, as Taylor had fallen into a cliff.
Fallen into a mirage.
Yes, into a bit of illusion, as we find out later, was projected by this cabal of subterranean atomic bomb worshippers. Nova is now alone. She, before Taylor disappears into the cliff, he says, "Nova, go and find Dr. Zaius," which kind of confused me because the movie started with Dr. Zaius being
tied up
by some chimpanzees. While Taylor and Nova go gallivanting away. But anyway, he says, go find Dr. Zaius. He disappears into a cliff. Nova rides away on a horse. She comes across Brent, who has crash landed. Brent goes up. We do the same exact scene from the first film where she can't speak. She is beautiful. He is mad. He is frustrated.
He looks like Charlton Heston a lot.
Yeah. If Charlton Heston was a BG is basically what this guy looks like.
That's true.
So he hops on the horse. They giddy up to Ape City. By the way, like these movies, post-apocalyptic movies are best when they are about exploration. So you can see the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion, at least.
Yeah.
When we are enjoying a post-apocalyptic story, I want to see more. I want to see the world. I want to see what happened.
Absolutely.
So this movie takes place at a crash site and then in the woods outside of Ape City for, I wrote this down, 53 minutes before any exploration.
Yeah.
We've seen Ape City. We've seen the desert. I want to see more.
But then...
for a movie that's called Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
You want to go beneath?
I want to go beneath, especially because when he actually does go beneath, they get captured by apes. They go to Ape City. They get captured. They escape. They end up running away into a subterranean cavern, which turns out to be the Queensboro subway station. And then the exploration begins.
And more so.
And more.
And more. It's more than the Queensboro subway system, it turns out.
Yeah, because then it leads into this, basically the entirety of Manhattan below the surface of the earth.
And that's the moment that this movie is like, oh, the coolest thing we had going for the first one was this reveal at the end, and people loved it, with the Statue of Liberty like broken on a beach, and he's like, oh,
what if we do that for 40 minutes?
Yeah, damn you all to hell, and all of that. And they're like, so we're going to take you underground. We're going to show you the New York Public Library, the Queensboro subway system. We're going to show you Radio City Music Hall.
Yeah, that was cool.
And then St. Patrick's Cathedral, but they're not worshiping Jesus. They're worshiping a nuclear bomb.
They're worshiping Adam, but it ain't that Adam.
Ooh. And that bomb has like the Alpha and Omega symbol on it and everything. It's very dramatic.
Very dramatic. And I loved the concept. When you first were like, hey, have you ever seen Beneath the Planet of the Apes? We should watch it. There's a cult of atom bomb worshippers. I was like, I am in.
It does take you a long time to get there, though.
Takes us a while to get there.
Yes, I agree with you that it takes a while.
And
it's a journey.
They're also telepathic.
They're telepathic, and there's a scene where you first see them. There's like a council of them, and they're kind of assaulting Brent with like a mind thing, and that's when he does what you said, where he tries to kill Nova.
Well, first he drinks some dirty cave water that makes him trip and try to kill Nova.
Yes.
And then he's like, I got to get out of here. I'm going to go in this weird church. He goes in there.
It's St. Patrick's Cathedral. It's a beautiful church.
It's weird. It is weird. And he gets in there and they mind control him again. And then they mind control both of them. And they're yelling at Brent. They're like, what do you know about the apes? And he's like, I don't know anything. And they're like, we know you know. We're telepathic. We know that you know something. And he's like, I don't know. For completely obfuscating the truth for no reason. Except for plot. So eventually they're like, oh, yeah, well, we're going to torture this girl in front of you. And they do that. And then he's like, fine, I'll tell you. The apes are marching to war. Why didn't you just tell them that?
And he also has no stake in the game for any of this.
You hate this place.
But he's also been there for 10 minutes.
Yeah, like
it feels like.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so this movie is super flawed.
Yeah, for sure. He has no allegiance to the apes.
He has no allegiance to Nova.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
He just so like if this movie was written today, I'd like to think that just the mere fact that he doesn't grapple with the fact and reality of him crash landing on a planet 3,000 years later than he thinks it is in time, he comes to the realization of this. He buries his crewmate. He like harumphs for a second, and then he's like gallivanting through Ape Land. And the first time he sees the apes, he's like, are those apes?
He's like, what the heck?
But then he's like in their living room.
Yeah.
So the movie is
give me some clothes.
It really lacks the real
magnitude.
It's not even magnitude. The reactions.
Yeah.
Just the general reactions that you would expect someone to have in all of these scenarios. And it takes you out of the movie a little bit, but this is a movie with talking apes that are, like we said, barely talking because the prosthetics are a little haphazard. But all of that said, the thing with these mutant humanoid bomb worshippers is an interesting angle, and it sets this movie apart. We'll talk about the rest of the movies in a second. Let's talk about the ending of this movie before we talk about the Planet of the Apes series as a whole, because I think there's some interesting things to talk about as a series and things that you might not even be aware of. You texted me when this movie ended, and I think you wrote verbatim, like the thing that I read that opened the film. There's a very dramatic ending of this film as well, where essentially the bomb, spoiler alert, goes off. And this is a world-ending bomb. So imagine this movie is ending, and the entire world is ending.
Well,
Planet of the funny thing about this, hang on, before we do, think about this. This is the sequel they made to a movie because the first movie made so much money, and they think we're gonna make a ton of money on this series, so let's make a sequel. I guess this is a little before the sequel scenario that we're in today. But they end this movie, and the studio lets them end this movie by destroying the entire world. That's how this movie ends. It just cuts to white.
It's pretty frustrating from a person who's enjoying a story standpoint. The way that they get there is Brent finds Taylor. They're both locked up in a cage. The telepaths have locked them both in a cage, and they're like, oh, we're going to make you kill each other because we're telepathic and we can force that to do that. So they do that. They overcome it. They kill the guy. Move on. Then they're trying to escape, but the apes are stealing the bomb because they're like, these humans, I can't believe they're still down here. They're definitely going to kill us all. Let's take their weapon. The humans are like, oh no, they're taking our weapons. A lot of them commit, suicide. A lot of them go out in a blaze of glory.
Strap on their Nikes.
Yeah. A lot, and then Taylor and Brent, Nova dies, gets shot by a gorilla. Taylor gets shot. Brent gets blown away like a old film noir with like a Tommy gun.
Yep.
And then as Taylor is dying, he's like, You didn't learn the lesson that we learned. So now I'm gonna kill everyone and destroy the world irreversibly. Like, what is that decision? What is that choice? If you're Taylor, why, as you're dying, you're like, oh, these people, if they get the bomb, they're gonna kill everyone. I know what I'll do. I'll do it for them. And then he detonates the nuclear bomb. It destroys the entire world. It does a whiteout, fade to white, and then you hear.
You have to act this out.
In one of the countless billions of galaxies in the universe lies a medium-sized star, and one of its satellites, a green and insignificant planet, is now dead. Cut to black. It said, produced by APJAC Productions Incorporated.
They doubled down on the
Credits.
post-apocalypticness of the movie.
They said, not only is this post-apocalyptic,
we're gonna finalize the apocalypticness of this planet and destroy it.
What is that like from?
Well, this is a good segue to talk about the series. Okay, so let me give you some background.
Because I was pretty frustrated at this point.
So here's some background.
I texted a lot of texts in full caps.
Yeah. There are 10 Planet of the Apes films. There's also a TV show, which I've never watched. I wish I had. There are 10 of these films. There's Planet of the Apes. Then there's Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Now, Beneath the Planet of the Apes was also a very successful movie. So the studio was like, we need to make more of these.
Sure.
But you guys blew up the planet. You ended the franchise. So what are we going to do? They're not Marvel. They don't have like 400 multiverses. They haven't thought that out. I mean, there was a time loop. So they did the best that they could, and they basically created 3 more films. There's Escape from the Planet of the Apes in 1971, and these come out every year. They bang these movies out. Conquest for the Planet of the Apes, 1972. Battle for the Planet of the Apes, 1973. And then a Planet of the Apes TV series in 1974. Now, these movies go back to Earth. So I don't fully remember how it all happens, but they end up back in like 1973 Earth with the apes and everything.
Oh.
Yeah. And this is where Caesar first becomes a character. Now, Caesar, and I don't remember the name of the 2 apes that are married in this film.
Zira is her name.
Mm-hmm. And his name is inconsequential because she's the bigger character.
Chimpanzee.
Chimpanzee, that's good. Oh, poor guy. He's really weak. So they end up on Earth. Those two have a baby. She's pregnant when they get to Earth. They have a baby. That baby is Caesar. Now, if you know the newest franchise of Planet of the Apes films, you know Caesar. But you're probably thinking, but that doesn't make sense.
Mm.
So you have to think of the Planet of the Apes films this way. There's Planet of the Apes and Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and then they close the loop. You could say the next 3 films and the TV series probably are actual direct sequels, but they're really not. They kind of take liberties with the storytelling and universe and narrative, so those 3 films kind of stand on their own. And then in 2001, no. Is that right? Yes.
The Mark Wahlberg
in 2001, the Mark Wahlberg, Tim Burton does a Planet of the Apes film, which people, you could say what you will about this film, but it's really not that bad. It's a remake of the original Planet of the Apes, and it does some different things, but it is essentially a remake of it. He wanted to reboot Planet of the Apes. He did it, and that film did its thing and then was forgotten, not rebooted. And then the film, the series was rebooted, and that's the last 4 films now with the new one coming out.
What was the first one called?
Rise of the Planet of the Apes in 2011, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War of the Planet of the Apes, and then Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which is coming out this week. Those movies talk about, the first one talks about Caesar, who is a chimpanzee who is in captivity. He's being tested on in the labs. James Franco and John Lithgow are in this. They're kind of
Tom Felton.
They're kind of trying to find.
Shout out to Tom Felton talk.
A lot of Harry Potter in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But they're trying
Did
to
you hear his
find.
new song that he came out with?
Focus.
Just a boy on a skateboard. I don't know how it goes.
My God. Anyway, back to Planet of the Apes, Lee.
My bad.
They're testing like a Alzheimer's disease or something. The medicine they create ends up it creates a subvirus that kills off humanity. So there's no nuclear war here. And then as humanity is dying off, Caesar, the monkey, the chimp that was tested, the ape starts becoming sentient. He starts becoming very smart. And over these films, he's the smartest. And then you watch the de-evolution of humans into more violence, and the de-evolution of humans actually a little bit in this series, and then apes of all kinds start becoming more sentient and aware and human, for lack of a better word. But that narrative doesn't tie in with any of those original films, really. So you can't say those are true prequels, because they're writing a different narrative. So when you look at the entire 10-film Planet of the Apes, you have essentially 4 different universes of apes that are created here. You have the first 2 films, you have the Tim Burton, you have the 3 other 70s films,
and then that may or may not include the TV series.
And then you have these films here. But narratively, none of them, outside of their little blocks that I just said, they don't tie in really. If you really dig in deep to the story, they just don't work.
Yeah. I think starting off with a time travel
scenario.
Yeah, I think benefits that.
It does. It's like what Marvel's doing. You throw time travel and multiverse things into a story, and then you open yourself up to be like, this is whatever it is. Don't think too much about it. But it's hard not to think about it. And I love the post-apocalyptic storytelling because I want to know what happened and what led from point A to point B in humanity and history. So as much as I love the Planet of the Apes series, I love all of these films. The first series because they're just fun and campy and they're silly, and then the newest because they're actually really well done. It's good filmmaking, good storytelling.
One thing you said just now kind of made me start thinking about why post-apocalyptic stories are so
Resonant.
Not resonant, just like they're so chock full of story and information. It's like maybe another reason why I really like alternate history stuff is because not only are you like you jump into a world that exists and you're going to listen or you're going to consume a story. Like, cool, that's awesome. I love stories. But not only that, you also get to get small little snippets on this other massive story of how did we get here.
Yeah.
So like when I'm watching Book of Eli, this is awesome. Dude is walking around with a machete and a book, and he's crossing the United States. That's sick. But also what you're getting is little tidbits of how the world turned out this way. And I think that having that background other story.
Yeah, that's full of Easter eggs.
Yeah.
And in that movie in particular, which, again, that movie is severely underrated, you're also getting little sneak things about this character that reveal itself over time. And then when you realize what this character's ailment is, your mind, you're like, I mean, when I found out,
yeah,
my mind, I was like,
twist.
Wait, and then you go back and rewatch the movie, and you're like, oh my god, this works. Brilliant filmmaking.
Yeah.
But I think I like this, like the books that I read, the same thing. I love the world building. And it's, I love prologue rich writing. I want the prologue.
Yeah.
I want to know how we got here, or I want to know where this planet is among the universe. I want to know all of that because I want to ground myself into this reality that I'm about to spend the next whatever amount of hours living in. To me, that's the rich vastness of storytelling that I like the most. And that's why science fiction as a whole, just going away from just the post-apocalyptic subgenre of science fiction as a whole is the most fully immersive, in my opinion, of all the genres because of that. Because it is building a time and a place, and it is telling you all the things you need to know about that time and place, and then letting you explore and discover the rest. And I mean, it is fully immersive in kind of a beautiful way to watch or read anything.
Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes opens this Friday at the United Theater. Are you excited for this film?
So I am excited for this film. I will go to see any Planet of the Apes film on the screens just because of my love for the series. I don't know a lot about the movie. I like to stay away from reading too much about a movie before seeing it. I do know, though, that this is a time jump. I think it's a hundreds of years time jump from the last film. So what that does in some ways is it's setting up essentially another time arc, another start point for another series. And I'm not entirely sure we need another series of these films, but I'm a sucker for it, so I'll definitely be here. How about you?
I am excited to see this movie. I do want to watch Dawn, Rise, and War 4 in the lead up. I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to do that, but I do want to. But something that occurred to me when I was watching Beneath the Planet of the Apes is I wonder if we're going to meet the lawmaker or the lawgiver.
Mm-hmm.
You
do meet the lawgiver in, I believe
War
it's Battle for the Planet of the Apes in 1973.
Oh, okay.
So you do meet the lawgiver.
Well, I wonder what they'll do with this one then.
I don't know. They need a bridge, though, between this series and the original series.
There's going to be a twist.
There will. But I would like to see a bridge of some sort. Because, like I said, all of these movies are, you could take the Tim Burton one out, and if you can find a way to connect the rest in a way that makes a little more sense, that would make me happy as a completist in watching these films. But I'm excited for it. And you know what? Like I said, in a few more weeks, we have Furiosa coming out. So, it's looking like a fun summer movie season ahead, and then summer movies. That's what we're going to talk about next week. So stay tuned next week for our summer movie preview, and check out Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes on the big screen, preferably here at the United Theater, opening this Friday. All right, Lee, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Next week, summer movies. Little teaser. What summer movie are you most excited about? And I know you haven't done any research on summer movies yet, so just ones that you know right now. This could change next week.
I mean, Furiosa looks pretty cool. I really enjoyed Mad Max Fury Road.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to just dive back in. Chris Hemsworth looks super funny.
He looks like he's having a hell of a good time.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, very excited.
Yeah. So, what? Do you have one?
I do, but you're gonna have to wait until next week. That's right. Stay tuned.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Until next time, thanks for listening to Box Office Culture.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the United Theater Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. And if you could take a moment to leave a review, we'd greatly appreciate it. Your feedback helps us create content that you love. So hit that subscribe button and leave us a review, and we'll see you on the next episode.